Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video we're going to be comparing the two main packages you can get on the new Mercedes G-Wagon. That is the G550 and the G63 AMG. Before we get into the video, I do want to mention a huge shout out and thank you to the Mercedes-Benz of Farmington for originally giving me some time with both of the G-Wagons. I'm going to include a link to their inventory in the description down below. They are a one-price store, so they're going to make your buying experience very easy and very straightforward as well. And then on a side note, if you want to save time and money the next time you purchase a car, link to my car buying guide in the description down below. Let's get into the comparison. Starting things under the hood of the G63, we have a turbocharged 4-liter V8 that goes through a 9-speed automatic transmission. It's good for 577 horsepower and then 627 pound-feet of torque. And both G-Wagons are all-wheel drive. And being an AMG, right, you've got the person that built the engine. That's one of the cool things about AMG models is having the handcrafted engines. And so, yeah, it just makes the vehicle feel a little bit more special, even though just any G-Wagon really is a special vehicle. But going from that to the 550, turbocharged 4-liter V8 goes through a 9-speed automatic transmission, good for 416 horsepower and then 450 pound-feet of torque. And from what I've heard, you can tune this to have similar power outputs to the G63 since they're both 4-liter turbocharged V8s. But, you know, base power outputs, right, are lower with the 550. Now going over the front end of the 63, definitely has that cool military appearance that the G-Wagon's known for. And you guys can see there with the turn signal indicators on the top. And then notice the appearance of the LED accent lights around the headlights. Just kind of remember how those look on the G63. Notice your AMG logo. And then also notice how the front grille looks. Kind of remember that. Got the giant Mercedes logo with the camera there at the top, which definitely is a cool aesthetic. And then you can see here with the front brush guard, which is interesting that they put it lower down on the G63s. I've seen a lot of people just remove them off of their G-Wagons. So, you know, if you want it, you can have it. If you don't have to have it. Anyways, now going over the 550, you'll notice some distinct appearance differences with the 550 over the 63. So, got the Mercedes logo there. Still have the cool turn signal indicators, right? And, you know, they look great from an aesthetic perspective. And then notice here with the design there with the LED accent lights and the headlights themselves. And also with the Mercedes logo in the center, we don't have a camera though, which is interesting. But notice how the grille is a little bit different, and then also the brush guard, how it's up on the car rather than down low. So just kind of how it's around the headlights, it makes the headlights look different, even though they're the same because of where the brush guard's located. It just gives the front end appearance of this completely distinct look. And, you know, that's how you tell a 550 from a 63 from a front end perspective, right? But moving from that to the side of the AMG, you're going to see 22s on most AMGs. You can't put anything smaller than like a 20 because of how big the front rotors are. They're like 14.9 inches. Love the matte finish on the wheels. That's something that's really cool that AMG does, is they'll do like matte wheels or even matte paint over the entire vehicle, which is just such a cool thing from the factory. But yeah, just a great aesthetic. Got the giant AMG brake caliper. And if you guys want, you can get matte paint on the regular 550 too, but it just seems like it's more common on AMG models. Anyways, you do have adaptive suspension with the AMG, and you can see there with the molding for the fender flare, and then you've got your V8 bi-turbo badge. And you'll notice a lot of AMG logos on this. It's kind of what Mercedes does to let people know, hey, this is a special one. Got the exhaust tips poking out the side, which isn't great for off-roading, but it's great for sound and aesthetics. But love the side view on the 63. I think it looks great. Now, these are aftermarket wheels for the 550. Now, with the 550, you will see these with 22-inch wheels all the time as well, but you can actually fit 18s and maybe even 17s, because notice those front rotors are significantly smaller. But I know for sure you can fit 18s, but 17s, I'd say maybe. It's a maybe. But yeah, with the 22s, it looks great, but it kind of emphasizes how small those front rotors are. And then this particular one has adaptive suspension. That's an option you can get on the 550. It doesn't come standard on it. And then notice again here with the molding for the fender flare, how that looks. And then notice the trim there on the side. And then notice it just says a V8. It doesn't say V8 by turbo. So interesting that they kind of put that. No exhaust tips poking out the side. Then you can see the side view here with the 550. So, it doesn't look as aggressive as the AMG, that's for sure. Now here's the key fob. Notice it says AMG and you got the AMG logo there. On the back, you've got your unlock and then your lock function. And then notice the taillights, they've kind of kept to the older theme, but they've modernized them because they've got LEDs in them now. Now here's a door panel in the back of the AMG. Notice the carbon fiber there and then the leather. It's so interesting. Like, this is a place that you're not really gonna, you'll see every so often, but still it's crazy they have leather there. Cargo cover here in the back. And notice storage space is really solid here in the rear. If you've ever, been in the back of like a Jeep Wrangler, it seems like that, maybe even slightly larger, but it's really practical from a storage space perspective, that's for sure. Now going over the rest of the rear of the AMG. So first off, you got the spare tire carrier there on the back, which has always looked cool because it's got like the cover over it and it's nicely painted, right, instead of just being like crappy rubber or something to cover the tire. And then notice here with the parking sensors and the receiver hitch there at the very bottom. Now here's the key fob for the regular G550. Notice no AMG logo. It's just regular Mercedes key fob, so it doesn't have the nice spruced up stuff. And again, you can see here with the LED tail lamps, definitely a distinctive look. Love the clicking sounds when you open everything up. Now this one has the upgraded interior you can get for the G-Wagons. So you can see the quilted design here on the back. And I think that looks great from an aesthetic perspective. And notice how like all of the reinforcement and everything there. And of course, we got to talk about these vacuum lines again. But notice here with the cargo cover in the back. And again, space is the same between both of them. You don't like get any extra space with the 63 or with the 550. It's identical from that perspective. And both of them really practical. And because they're boxy, there's so much height back there, so you can fit tall things there in the rear. And then going over the rest of the rear of the 550, this one has, again, just like all G-Wagons, the spare tire carrier, but notice the silver trim there on the outside of the spare tire carrier. You guys can see that kind of set up, and then you got the recovery hook there on the back end. And then going over the rest of the rear, with the silver, it kind of makes it pop a little bit more. And then notice here we've got the high ground clearance exhaust tips with the 550. This is kind of, again, more the more off-road oriented version of the G-Wagon, having those tips up there rather than poking out the side, which would poking them out the side makes it so that the breakover angle isn't as good with the 63. But popping into the interior of the 63, notice everything's covered in leather. Again, this is ultimately a luxury vehicle, and you got carbon fiber, nice metallic trim everywhere, Burmester sound system, and then notice heated seats there in the back. And then you got the side steps with the exhaust tips, which is such a cool aesthetic. Even though it's not practical for off-roading, it's so cool. Got the AMG logo. And then you can see here with the seats, notice the design there, really nice leather. And space is actually really good. Again, if you've been in like the back of the new Ford Bronco or Jeep Wrangler, it feels pretty similar with the backseat. A lot more comfortable, but like space-wise, that's what I'm trying to make a point of. Pretty similar from that perspective. And then popping to the rear of the 550. Now this one has, again, the upgraded interior. So you notice the leather's a little bit nicer, and then also the design touches are a little bit nicer. Wood trim though on this one instead of, you can get carbon fiber though, like you can option out whatever you want on G-Wagon. Notice still have heated seats for the rear. Then you got the window control there for the rear. If you guys are wanting the Burmester sound system, it's amazing. Now notice here with the design on the seats, just look a little bit nicer. And then this leather is more comfortable. I can also comment on that. It's a little bit softer. And you can see there with the grip material there on the side steps so that you don't slip when you're getting in, especially if there's like snow or mud or anything like that. And the vent there for the rear passenger. But space is the same with both the G-Wagons. They don't change anything there. Still got the vents there in the center, and then the climate controls and everything there for the rear passengers. So, just as practical as the 63 from a rear seat perspective I suppose is what we'll go with. Now popping back over to the 63. As you guys can see here, notice with the door panel, again, you'll notice that this doesn't necessarily look as nice as what we have over in the 550 when we pop over there, but this is the base interior you can get with the 63. So just kind of take that into account. This is your entry level. Like, it's that nice as an entry level. But also the seat adjustments, heated cooled seats, Burmester sound system. Again, you got your AMG plaque. And then here are the front seats. You can see pillowy headrest. And then notice the design there in the center of the seat. You got the inserts with the leather. And notice no adjustments there on the side of the seat because they're on the door panel. Really nice pedals. And then notice the light control here. And then you got like your lane departure, you know, all that practical stuff. And then leather trim around. And then you can see the vents, how they do that kind of twirl thing, which is really cool. And popping from that over into the 550, you can see again with the leather trim, again, really nice, really high quality stuff. Just looks a lot more expensive. So I guess if you're going to get a G-Wagon, I'd recommend getting the upgraded interior. It is extra money, but I think if you're already spending over 6 figures, you might as well take an extra, another several $1,000s and get the nicer. I mean, look at those seats, especially. Just and they are more comfortable. So just what did I have to say? And notice how you've got like that ledge for the seat, so you get a higher seating position. And then you can see there with the pedal layout as well. And then you've got the parking brake right down below. And then notice same thing with like lane departure and parking sensors and all that. And then you can see the trim there on the dash, and then speaker for the Burmester sound system. But popping into the 63, you guys can see here with the gauge cluster animation on startup, that looks great from an aesthetic perspective. And going over the steering wheel itself, you also notice really nice. You can get different steering wheel options with the 63. I've seen some steering wheels with like Alcantara and carbon fiber, which look great. But notice just the material use. You got really nice paddles. The controls in the steering wheel are really easy to use. Everything makes sense. And so it's just really practical from a steering wheel perspective. And then you notice you even have controls for the infotainment system on the steering wheel. Regular stocks, though, on either side. And also, you guys will notice going from that to the gauge cluster, we've got this digital gauge cluster. Looks fantastic from an aesthetic perspective, and it's really user-friendly, pretty straightforward to use. You've got the controls on the left side of the steering wheel to control the center gauge cluster. But I don't know, I just think they've done a really good job with the overall aesthetic of it. It looks modern. Notice they've got like the carbon fiber print there in the center of part of the gauge cluster. So yeah, easy to use. And notice all the different drive modes you get here with the 63. You probably use individual the most, right? So you can just set it up how you want. Loud exhaust, comfort suspension, that's always the route to go. Now, the only downside about the G-Wagons is the infotainment systems are not touchscreens. They don't have Mercedes' newest infotainment system, which apparently when they do the refresh, they'll get that infotainment system. But everything's controlled via a dial. Good thing the dial is easy to use. And then you guys can also notice the camera system here on the 63 is fantastic. It's got the full 360 camera system. But yeah, the point that I was trying to make with the whole dial system is it's easy to use. So even though it's not the best system, right, it's easy enough. But notice you've got some different controls that are kind of hidden in different portions of the infotainment system, like you got to dive in. Now notice we've got the lockers. So this has center, front, and rear. And they're labeled in order of how you'll use them. So you'll go typically center first, rear, and then front in terms of everything locked. And, that means this thing's super capable off-road. I can tell you that right now. And then notice here all the controls there for the infotainment system. So you have like the clicker pad, and then you have the dial, whichever one you basically prefer to use. And then you have that for the suspension to firm it up because it has the adaptive dampers from the factory. And notice the drive mode select right there. And then we've got our exhaust mode. Always have that open, right? If you're going to get the G63, you always got to have that open. But notice here at the center console, tons of storage space. Then you got the leather trim there on the top. And then notice the grab handle there with the carbon fiber and leather on it. So funny that they have that. And then you can see sunroof. And notice really nice headliner as well with the 63. So that's definitely a big plus. And then you can see the mirror, really nice from a material standpoint. Just regular mirror, but it just looks kind kind of like just ornate, I guess is the best way to put it. But popping back over into the 550. So first off, you can see here with the steering wheel, nice from a material standpoint. And then notice the controls there on the steering wheel. Again, really nice with the materials, and tons of practicality built into the controls themselves. Notice the paddle shifters on the back aren't nearly as aggressive as what you have in the AMG. And then you still have the column shifter as well. But, I think they did a pretty good job with that. Going to the gauge cluster and see full digital gauge cluster just like the G63. So that's another big plus with the 550. And then notice you can control little screens there off to the side. So it's just cool how customizable, I guess, the center gauge cluster is. And that's the benefit of doing a digital gauge cluster rather than an analog. And that's why a lot of automakers are going for the full digital gauge clusters nowadays. And then notice that we have a desert mode here, because again, they know that you're probably not going to take the G63 off-road, 22-inch wheels and, exhaust tips poking out the side. But this, you got the desert mode. They expect, people might take the 550 off-road. Now, the camera system isn't as good in the 550 because, again, you don't have that front camera and everything. I don't know why they did that. It seems like this should be the one to have the front camera because it's, again, the more off-road version of the G-Wagon. So yeah, I'm not sure why. I understand that there's the brush card in front of it, but I'm still not sure why Mercedes did that. I feel like there's going to be a fix in the future. Maybe we'll see what happens. But again, still not a touchscreen, even if you get the 550 for now. And again, easy enough to use, and it's nicely integrated into the dash as well. And notice massaging seats on both of them. So like you can literally be off-roading and get a massage, which sounds very appealing to me, if you ask me. And as for the rest of the functionality and infotainment system, I guess I kind of commented this a little bit with the G63. You have to dive into a few different menus to get to different features with the vehicle, which sometimes could be slightly frustrating. Anyways, look at all the leather on the dash, wood trim. Again, there with the interior. And then, again, you've got all the lockers there in the center, which actually might be used here with the 550. Really like the vents. And I'm really curious to see like what this actually does off-road with some off-road tires. I've heard some good things, but, it's the difference between hearing it and actually experiencing it yourself. But I love that design there in the center and just how it's front, like they display that. They're like, this is a G-Wagon. It's got off-road stuff. Here you go. This is big buttons right here in the center. Anyways, clock down below. Got more wood trim that covers the cup holders. And like I said, you can change that out if you want like carbon fiber or different trim pieces. And then notice this is all the same here in the center. And then you guys can see there with the dial. I guess this one doesn't. I thought this one did have the adaptive dampers. I guess I was wrong. So this particular one doesn't. Sorry about saying that earlier, because it doesn't have the damper button. But I know you can get that as an option on the 550. So my bad on that, but like I said, you can get it as an option. But I guess driving the two different G-Wagons, one with the adaptive dampers and one without, the 550 drove very smooth. And the 63, when it was in the comfort setting, drove smooth, but when it was not in the comfort setting, it was definitely rougher. Notice you even had leather padding on the side for your knee, which is, if you're a taller person, I'd say that's pretty much a must to get the nicer interior so you can have that nice little padding piece. But yeah, just everything's covered in leather and looks great, and you've got some ambient lighting as well. So it just definitely, spruces up the interior. Premium headliner, again, you got the sunroof there at the top. All looks great from an aesthetic perspective. And then you can see there the speaker for the sound system. Really nice in terms of the finish on that. And then same thing with the mirror as well. And man, that's pretty much everything for those two walk-arounds. So let's quickly get into summing things up. So first off, the G63, yes, it has nicer aesthetics with certain things with the exhaust tips, and it's got more power, and it's got the AMG badge. But here's the deal: you can get the same exact interior on a 550. And if you wanted to be a badge snob, you could put AMG badges on your 550. I wouldn't recommend that, but obviously you could. But after driving both of them, here's what I have to say. The AMG is faster. The brakes are better. But the AMG, even in the comfort setting, seems like it was a little bit firmer than the 550. It seems like the 550 just rode a little bit smoother. So I think they just tuned the AMG to be just firmer right from the get-go. So there is that. And then on top of that, right, it's almost impossible to get an AMG at this point. The waiting lists for most dealerships are years out, and the price premium over sticker is massive. Whereas a 550, there's still a price premium over sticker, but there's actually a chance of you being able to get one. So that's something to also consider. And I know that most people buying these are never going to take them off-road, but the 550 would definitely be the off-road one to go for, because you can get smaller wheels, and then with smaller wheels, you'd be able to have tires with more sidewall, which is going to be more practical. And again, it's got the higher ground clearance exhaust tips. And so here's what I have to say. After driving both of them and everything, I thought the AMG was tons of fun, and it's great, but I don't understand the price premium over the 550. I would rather get a 550 than a 63, because a 63 to me, I'm like, oh, well, it's got the same engine, it's got bigger brakes, and it's got this huge price premium because it's an AMG. Well, I'd rather get the one that is a better value, aka the 550, because if I want more power, I'll just tune the engine. And if I want it to look like an AMG, I'll just get aftermarket exhaust, right? And, you know, again, throw some AMG badges on it, and that'll be a lot less expensive than spending the extra, you know, like it's like $100,000 price difference is what I've seen in terms of the difference between both the models after markup. So yeah, let me know which one you guys would pick, and there you go.